The millionaire everyone believed had lost everything stood trembling on his own 2 feet, staring down the woman who once controlled every corner of his life. Moments earlier, no one thought Elliot Kingsley would ever rise again, not physically and not emotionally. But as his fiance's voice filled the air with venom, he did the unthinkable. He stood, unassisted, defiant, and ready to reclaim the life she had slowly taken from him. What no one knew was that this moment was not born from anger or pride, but from the unexpected love of a woman society overlooked. Stay with me, because what happens next will change everything you think you know about strength, healing, and fate. The night Elliot Kingsley's life shattered did not look like a tragedy at all. It looked like a luxury car commercial. A deep blue Bentley Continental whispered along a narrow mountain road, hugging the edge of Glacier Crest Lake in Montana. Snow globe flakes drifted down from a violet sky. The lake below was a sheet of glass reflecting jagged white peaks, and the headlights cut a clean tunnel through the cold. Inside, silence was sharp enough to hurt. Elliot had one hand relaxed on the steering wheel, but his jaw was clenched. Beside him, Veronica Hale stared at her phone, her perfectly manicured nails tapping the glass like a metronome of irritation. They had been together for a year. He knew that tap, tap, tap. It meant a storm was coming. At what point, Veronica finally said, her voice dipped in sarcasm, does this stop being a long trial run and become an engagement that actually leads somewhere? Elliot kept his eyes on the road. You're wearing a ring that costs more than most people's houses. We flew private to Montana. We're literally driving through a postcard. I thought that counted as somewhere. Oh, please, she scoffed. A ring and a trip don't mean commitment. They're accessories, fun, temporary. I'm talking about something real. A date, a plan, a wedding. He tightened his grip on the wheel. Wind roared softly against the car as they rounded a bend. Veronica, I thought we agreed we weren't rushing, he said, trying to keep his tone level. Love isn't a checklist. It's how you walk together along the same road. She turned to him, eyes flashing. It's hard to walk together when one person gets to choose the road, the speed, and the destination. You're always in control, Elliot. Your schedule, your deals, your rules. I'm just an accessory you put in the passenger seat. He laughed once, but there was no humor in it. You think I bought this Bentley and flew you here so you could feel like an accessory? Think you bought this Bentley so you could feel like a king, she shot back. I'm just here to decorate your throne. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The road narrowed, cutting between rock wall and steep drop, a thin guardrail, the only barrier between them and the invisible fall. Elliot exhaled, the air white with frustration. You want a contract, I want a partner. That's the difference. You're dodging, she snapped. You always dodge. If you really wanted a partner, we'd be looking at venues right now, not glaciers. Tell me straight, Elliot. Are you marrying me or am I just your very expensive distraction? He felt something inside him bend, then harden. You want something straight? He said, glancing at her for just a heartbeat too long. Fine. Since you seem to have all the answers, illuminate me. Who came first, the chicken or the egg? Veronica blinked. What? The chicken or the egg, he repeated, a tired, bitter half-smile on his lips. You claim you want life planned like a spreadsheet. So tell me, which one came first? If you're brilliant enough to solve what science still argues about, maybe I'll believe you can handle a lifetime with me. I'll propose immediately. Her cheeks flushed with anger. That's ridiculous. You know, no one can answer that. Stop changing the subject. Exactly, Elliot murmured. You want guarantees in a world built on mysteries. Her voice rose. Oh, so now I'm stupid. I'm stupid because when I asked for commitment? No, he said quietly. You're dangerous because you only trust what you can control. The argument swelled, words overlapping, her accusations sharp, his responses clipped. Neither of them noticed how the car was drifting an inch at a time toward the center line, how the curve ahead tightened, how the mountain road narrowed like a funnel. Then time snapped. Headlights exploded around the bend ahead. A massive truck barreled toward them on the opposite side, far too fast for the curve. In that suspended second, the world shrank to two white beams in one impossible choice. Elliot did not think about his company. He did not think about his money. He did not even think about whether Veronica deserved it. He just turned the wheel, violently, instinctively, putting his side of the car between her and the oncoming truck. The impact was a scream of metal against metal, glass detonating, Veronica's voice lost in the roar. There was a moment of weightlessness, then a crushing, twisting force as the world rolled, flipped, and slammed into black. Silence followed, a silence so deep it felt like the end of everything. When Elliot surfaced again, it was to a burning white light and the smell of antiseptic. He tried to move his legs. Nothing, no response. As if his body ended at the waist. Panic clawed up his throat, but his voice came out hoarse. I can't feel my legs. A doctor in a pale blue coat stood at the foot of the bed, hands folded, face calm but shadowed. Mr. Kingsley, I need you to listen carefully. Elliot stared at him, vision blurring, heart pounding. The accident caused severe trauma to your spine, the doctor continued. We did everything possible. The surgery stabilized your vertebrae, but the damage to your spinal cord is extensive. I'm afraid the paralysis in your legs is permanent. The word hung there. Permanent, heavy, final. Elliot swallowed hard when the room seemed to tilt. Somewhere to his right, someone gasped dramatically. Oh my God, Veronica said, but her tone was strangely flat. Permanent? As in he's never walking again? The doctor glanced at her. That is our professional expectation, yes. Veronica looked down at her nails. One was slightly chipped. She frowned at it as if that were the real disaster in the room. We'll need help, she said finally. A physical therapist or a nurse. Someone who can handle the messy stuff. Messy stuff. That's what his life had become. Elliot stared at the ceiling. The white tiles above him blurred into a soft, suffocating fog. Something burned in his throat, but no tears came. He had spent years building an empire, negotiating impossible deals, bending markets. He couldn't negotiate with this. Later, back at Kingsley Mountain Estate, the sunset spilled gold across the towering windows. Outside, Glacier Crest Lake burned orange under the sky. But in Svaistin, the air was cold. Elliot sat in a wheelchair by the window, his body a steel cage of pain and numbness. Machines had been replaced by silence. Nurses had been replaced by Veronica's perfume drifting in from the next room. She stood at the mirror, carefully applying lipstick, her reflection more important than the man behind her. What I wouldn't give, Elliot muttered, his voice low, for a real bath, for 10 minutes of not feeling like a burden to gravity and everyone around me. You won't have to feel like that for long, Veronica said lightly, still focused on her lips. I hired someone. She'll come take care of all that. You're in good hands, trust me. He turned his chair slightly. You hired someone? Yes, she said, snapping the lipstick closed. I mean, look at these nails. You can't honestly expect me to ruin them, scrubbing your back and lifting you in and out of a tub. I'm your fiancé, Elliot, not your nurse. He stared at her, disbelief flickering into something darker. I thought walking together along the same road was what you wanted, he said quietly. Now I can't walk at all, and suddenly you need someone else to hold the handles of my chair. She laughed, a bright, hollow sound. Don't be dramatic. I'm doing what's best for both of us. A knock sounded at the bedroom door. Soft, almost hesitant. Veronica's face lit up in a polished, performative smile. That must be her. She opened the door with a practiced sweep. Standing there was a woman in a simple coat, cheeks pink from the mountain air, eyes calm and alert. There was nothing glamorous about her, but the way she held herself made the room feel different, like someone had opened a window inside the air itself. Good evening, and the woman said, voice warm but professional. My name is Marina Cole. I'm here to take care of Mr. Kingsley. Veronica waved a hand dismissively. Perfect. He's all yours. Bathe him, deal with whatever, and if you can somehow wash all the bitterness off him too, I'll owe you a miracle. She dropped a quick kiss on Elliot's cheek, leaving a smear of red on his skin that felt like a stain instead of affection. I have plans. I'll be back tonight, she said, grabbing her designer bag. The door clicked shut behind her and suddenly the house felt too big, too quiet. Elliot stared at the woman now standing a few feet away. She didn't look away. There was no pity in her eyes, just a steady, grounded compassion that made him feel exposed. Mr. Kingsley, she said softly, I'm here to help you with whatever you need. He felt humiliation flare like heat under his skin. Why does a complete stranger have to help me bathe? He snapped. Go away, I didn't hire you. Marina didn't flinch. You didn't hire me, she agreed calmly, but you are the one who needs help to start living again. A bath is just the first step. Her words landed somewhere he didn't want anyone to touch. He turned his chair toward the window, trying to put his back to her, and to the new reality pressing in on him from all sides. Outside, the lake was still. Inside, his chest was a storm, and somewhere in that storm, a quiet question began to rise, one he couldn't ignore. If you were in Elliot's place, trapped between a cold fiancé and a stranger who seems to care more than she does, would you still believe Veronica deserves a place in your life, yes or no? Marina didn't move for several seconds after Elliot turned his back to her. She simply stood there in the quiet bedroom, letting the weight of his frustrations settle. Most caregivers would have rushed to reassure him or filled the silence with unnecessary words, but she understood something that few people did. Pain needed space before it could shift. She stepped forwards only when the tension in his shoulders began to tremble. "Mr. Kingsley," she said gently, "you don't have to let me help you, but you also don't have to face this alone." He closed his eyes. Alone. The word carried more gravity now than the accident itself. Without answering, he gestured weakly toward the bathroom. It was not permission, but it wasn't rejection either. Marina walked in first, turning on the taps and adjusting the temperature until steam curled softly above the tub. She moved with a quiet confidence, the kind of attentiveness that came from living through more hardship than she spoke of. When she re-entered the bedroom, she positioned his wheelchair beside the edge of the mattress so she could assist him in transferring. "Lean toward me just a little," she said. "I'll support you." Elliot resisted instinctively. "I don't want anyone supporting me." "You already are," she replied softly. "Gravity, the floor, the chair beneath you. Support isn't weakness, it's physics." He almost smiled at that despite himself. Almost. With careful, skilled movements, Marina slid an arm behind his back and another beneath his arm, guiding him from chair to bed, then bed to tub. He felt every ounce of humiliation burn through him, but Marina's presence was calm enough to soften the edges of it. The warm water enveloped his legs, and he winced not from pain, but from the strange sensation of being cared for in a way that didn't feel transactional. She dipped a sponge into the fragrant bath, lifting it slowly to ease him into the process. The steam carried hints of eucalyptus and rosemary, scents that felt oddly grounding. "You're tense," Marina murmured. "If you breathe with the water, it helps." Elliot stared at the fogged window. "I don't need breathing exercises." "Maybe not," she said, "but you need something." For the first time in days, his voice cracked. "I feel like half a man." Marina paused, then knelt beside the tub so she was level with him. Her expression wasn't pity, it was something deeper. "When life takes something from us, it doesn't erase who we are," she said. "It forces us to find the parts we've ignored." Elliot swallowed hard. Her voice was steady, but it struck somewhere he didn't want touched. "Do you give these speeches to everyone to hear?" he asked, trying to mask vulnerability with sarcasm. "Only to the ones who need it and pretend they don't," Marina replied. She continued bathing him with professional distance and emotional warmth, a balance few people could hold. Elliot let out a slow breath he didn't know he'd been holding. When she reached his back, her hand stilled at the long scar that cut across his spine. "How did this happen?" she asked carefully. He stiffened. "Didn't Veronica tell you?" "No," Marina said. "She didn't say much at all." Of course she hadn't. "It was the crash," Elliot said. "The truck was coming straight toward us. I turned the car so it would hit my side. I didn't think, I just reacted." Marina's eyes softened. "You protected her." "I thought I was protecting someone who loved me," he said quietly. "Turns out I was protecting someone who couldn't care less what happened to me." There it was, the quiet truth he hadn't spoken aloud to anyone. Marina lowered the sponge, her voice gentler than the water. "What you did that day wasn't weakness. It was instinct, compassion, sacrifice. Those aren't gone, Elliot. Losing your mobility doesn't erase your character." His chest tightened unexpectedly. He had built an empire, but no one had spoken to him like that in years. Not with honesty, not with reverence for the parts of him he didn't recognize anymore. Before he could answer, a soft clicking sound came from the hallway. Marina frowned. "Did you expect anyone?" "No," Elliot said, dread prickling beneath his skin. The door creaked open. A small head peeked inside. Brown curls, bright, curious eyes, no fear whatsoever. "Mom," the girl whispered, "are you in here? I didn't let anyone see me." Marina froze. "Lila." The little girl stepped fully into the room, cheeks flushed from running. Her voice came out in a rush. "I tried to stay in the bedroom like you said, but I couldn't find you, and the house is huge, and I got lost, and..." Her words cut off abruptly as she noticed Elliot in the bathtub. Her eyes widened, not with fear or discomfort, but with fascination. "Hi," she said simply. The absurdity of the moment was almost enough to make Elliot laugh. Almost. Marina quickly stood, mortified. "Lila, sweetheart, you shouldn't be here. This is Mr. Kingsley's private space. Go wait in the room now." But Lila didn't move. Instead, she tilted her head and asked with genuine innocence, "What happened to your legs?" Elliot felt something inside him crumble. Not anger, not shame, something far older, something raw. "I had an accident," he said quietly. Lila nodded slowly, absorbing the information in a way only children could. Then she stepped closer. My mom says when something breaks in one place, life makes it stronger in another, she said. So maybe your legs are just trying to figure out how to be special. The words sliced straight through him. Direct, pure, true in a way adults forgot how to be. Marina moved to pull her daughter away, apologizing, but Elliot lifted a hand. It's all right, he whispered. She can stay for a moment. Lila beamed and climbed onto the rug beside the tub, dipping her fingers into the water as if testing its warmth. I can help, she said happily. I'm going to be a physical therapist when I grow up. Mom says I'm already good at it. Elliot didn't know whether to laugh or cry. All he knew was that something shifted in him. The grief that had been a heavy stone in his chest felt suddenly cracked, as though light were slipping through. Marina watched the exchange, a mix of apology and awe in her eyes. Elliot met her gaze, and for the first time since the crash, he felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. Later, after the bath, as Marina wrapped a towel around him and carefully helped him back into his chair, Elliot spoke without thinking. Why do you talk to me that way? Marina blinked. What way? Like I'm still someone. She paused, hands resting on the armrests of his wheelchair, her voice soft but unflinching. Because you are. Something deep and odd him cracked at that, not because the words were gentle, but because they were true. As Marina opened the door to wheel him toward the bedroom, Elliot let himself breathe fully for the first time since the accident. This woman, this stranger, had reached places in him Veronica had never even noticed. And he wasn't sure what scared him more, the pain he carried or the possibility that this quiet caregiver might be the one person capable of healing it. If you were Elliot, feeling the difference between Veronica's cold distance and Marina's warmth, would you begin to trust Marina's presence in your life? Yes or no? The snow outside Kingsley Mountain Estate had begun to thaw by the time Elliot realized his life was no longer defined by what he had lost, but by what had quietly begun to grow around him. Days passed, then weeks, and every afternoon Marina returned to his room with the same calm determination, the same focused touch, the same belief that healing was possible, even if the doctors had surrendered that hope long ago. Lila, true to her nature, slipped into the sessions whenever she could. Some days she hummed softly while dabbing oil onto Elliot's feet. Other days she offered commentary that made Marina shriek in embarrassment, and Elliot burst into unexpected laughter. Their presence filled the house with something he didn't even recognize at first. Warmth, life, the echo of a family he'd never allowed himself to imagine. But progress never arrives without disruption. One frigid afternoon, as Marina secured the straps of the harness and positioned Elliot between the parallel bars, the door swung open so violently that it hit the wall with a dull crack. Veronica stood on the threshold, face sharp, eyes blazing. She looked like someone who had finally noticed the world rotating without her and refused to accept it. What is this? She demanded, stepping forward. What are you doing to him? Lila instinctively retreated behind Marina's legs, clutching her mother's hand. Marina stayed composed, but Elliot saw the flicker of fear in her eyes. He straightened his shoulders as much as he could. Veronica, he said calmly, we're doing physical therapy. She let out a harsh laugh. Physical therapy? With who? A professional or a maid playing pretend? Elliot felt anger stir dangerously in his chest. He had heard insults hurled at his disability, at his failure, even at his company's decisions. But something about the way she spoke about Marina made him feel protective in a way he hadn't expected. She knows my body better than any therapist you've hired, Elliot said. She listens, she tries, she cares. So this is what you've been doing? Veronica snapped. Letting some woman and her child invade our home while I'm out trying to keep our social life alive? Elliot gripped the bars. Our social life died when you stopped seeing me as human. Marina stepped forward, voice steady but humble. Miss Hale, please. We were only trying to help him stand today. If you could give us a moment. No, Veronica interrupted sharply. You're done here. Pack your things and go, both of you. Lila whimpered. Marina instinctively pulled her closer. For a moment, the room felt frozen, as if the air itself held its breath. Then Elliot inhaled slowly, deeply, letting the weight of the moment settle. You don't get to decide that, he said softly. Veronica looked stunned. Excuse me? You don't get to decide who stays in my life, Elliot repeated. Not anymore, if I may. He took a shaky breath and pushed against the bars. His arms trembled violently, his jaw clenched, sweat beading across his forehead. Marina reached forward instinctively to steady him, but he shook his head. I need to do this, he whispered. He lifted himself an inch, then two. His legs, supported by the harness, trembled beneath him but did not collapse. Marina's eyes filled with tears. Lila's hands clasped together as she gasped. Veronica stood frozen in disbelief. Elliot Kingsley, who had been told he would never stand again, rose to his full height. The room erupted into stunned silence. He turned toward Veronica, breathing hard but steady. "You broke me long before the accident," he said. "But Marina and Lila, they helped me build myself again. Not my legs, my heart." Veronica's jaw clenched. "So what now? You're choosing them? Her?" Elliot closed his eyes briefly, then opened them with clarity he hadn't felt in years. "Yes," he said. "I am." The words struck through the room like a bell. Veronica sputtered in rage, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. "You're insane. You're throwing away everything we had for a woman who wipes your back and a child who sneaks through your hallway." "All I had," Elliot replied, "was noise. With them, I have peace, Mom." Veronica finally stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The echo faded slowly, replaced by a stillness that felt almost sacred. Elliot remained standing until his arms could no longer hold him, and as he sank slowly back into the chair, Marina knelt before him, tears sliding down her cheeks. "You did it," she whispered. "You really did it." "I didn't do it alone," he replied, brushing a trembling hand along her cheek. Life at Kingsley Mountain Estate changed after that day. Veronica disappeared from his life completely, leaving behind only the faint scent of her expensive perfume and a long list of lessons he would never forget. Marina and Lila stayed, not because Elliot needed them, but because he asked them to. In the weeks that followed, the progress continued. First came the tingling in his calves, then a twitch in his toes, then the unmistakable sensation of pressure when Marina pressed along his foot. Eventually, with enough determination, Elliot began taking slow, controlled steps with a walker. Each step shook him, challenged him, but filled him with indescribable pride. Months later, under the vaulted ceiling of a small white church in Montana, sunlight streaming through stained glass, Elliot waited at the end of the aisle. He was standing, not perfectly, not without support, but standing. Marina appeared in a simple white dress, glowing with a quiet beauty that came from her strength rather than her clothes. Lila walked beside her holding a bouquet of wildflowers. Every head in the room turned, not because the scene was extravagant, but because it felt pure. When Marina reached him, Elliot took her hands in his. "You gave me my life back," he said. "Not my legs, my purpose." Marina's tears shone in the soft light. "You gave yourself your life back. I only reminded you that you could." They married with the ease of two souls who had already chosen each other long before vows were spoken. And when the ceremony ended, Lila threw flower petals toward the sky, laughing as they drifted down around their new family. Later, as the three of them stood outside the church, the mountains rising in the distance, Elliot whispered, "Some people break us so we can see who is truly meant to help build us again." Marina leaned her head on his shoulder. "And some people walk into our lives to show us what love actually feels like." Their fingers intertwined, and together they step forward into a new beginning. If you reach this point, I'm curious, did this ending make you feel hopeful for Elliot and Marina's new life together? Yes or no? If you enjoyed the journey, please leave a comment below, like the video, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a new story. I'd also love to know which country you're watching from. Don't forget to share this story if it touched your heart.